The square root property states that if x squared equals a, then x equals plus or minus the square root of a. Note that this property gives us two solutions because of this plus or minus. The reason we have this plus or minus here is because the square root always gives a positive answer. But if you square something, this x could be negative. For example, if you take the square root of 100, you get positive 10. So we know that 10 squared is equal to 100. But negative 10 squared is also equal to 100 because the negatives cancel out. And because of that, whenever we get the solution, we need to add a plus or minus before it. Now, let's go through the steps of how to use the square root property. Number 1, we're going to isolate the quadratic term. This is going to be whatever term is squared. We're going to also make sure the coefficient is 1. If it's not, we're going to multiply or divide to make it 1. Number 2, we're going to apply the square root property we mentioned before. And we want to make sure we remember the plus and minus symbol. Number 3, we're going to simplify the radical. And number 4, we're going to check the solutions to make sure the equation holds. Now, let's get started with our first practice problem. As you can see, we have x plus 2 squared equals 25. This x plus 2 is our quadratic term, and it's squared. As you can see, it's isolated, so we can start with the square root property. This gives us x plus 2 equals the plus or minus of the square root of 25. Next, we're going to want to isolate our x. So we do x equals the square root of 25 minus 2. And now we can simplify this entire expression. This gives us x equals plus or minus 5 minus 2. On one hand, we have x equals positive 5 minus 2. And on the other hand, we have x equals negative 5 minus 2. So x equals 3. And also x equals negative 7. So now we can plug these in, subtract our answer. So we have 3 plus 2 squared equals 25, which gives us 5 squared equals 25. 25 equals 25. We know x equals 3 is true. And also let's try negative 7. Negative 7 plus 2 squared equals 25. Negative 5 squared equals 25. 25 equals 25. So x equals negative 7 is also correct. Now, let's do 4 times 3x minus 5 squared equals 200. As you can see, our 3x minus 5 is our squared term, so we're going to want to isolate this. We can do this by dividing both sides by 4. We can start with that. And we get 3x minus 5 squared equals 50. Next, we're going to use the square root property to get 3x minus 5 equals the square root plus or minus of 50. Now, let's isolate this x. We can do 3x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 50. And then we can divide both sides by 3 to isolate that x and get x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 50 divided by 3. The square root of 50 can be simplified to 5 root 2, because 5 squared is 25 times 2 is 50, divided by 3. Our final solutions are x equals 5 plus 5 root 2 divided by 3, or x equals 5 minus 5 root 2 divided by 3. And optionally, you can check your work by plugging these two values into it, and you should get 200. Now, let's do 2b squared plus 64 equals 0. Our quadratic term is going to be this b squared, so we want to isolate this. Let's start by moving the 64 to the right. We get 2b squared equals negative 64. Now, we divide both sides by 2 to isolate that b squared, and we get b squared equals negative 32. Now we can use our square root property to get b equals plus or minus the square root of negative 32. Whenever we have a negative inside of a square root, we have to use I. I is equal to the square root of negative 1. So this gives us plus or minus the square root of 32 times I. Now we can further simplify. This gives us plus or minus 4 root 2 I. So b is equal to positive 4 root 2I, or b is equal to negative 4 root 2I. Now we have y squared minus 27 equals 0. Our y squared is a quadratic term, so let's isolate that. We have y squared equals 27. So now we can use the square root property. Do y equals plus or minus the square root of 27. This gives us plus or minus 3 root 3. Our answer is y equals 3 root 3, or y equals negative 3 root 3. For this question, we have 3/4 a squared plus 6 equals 18. A squared is going to be our quadratic term, so let's try to isolate this. So first, let's have 3/4 a squared equals 18 minus 6, which is going to be 12. Now, let's make sure this coefficient is 1 and fully isolate this term. So a squared is going to be equal to 12 times 4 divided by 3, because we're multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of 3/4, which is 4/3. So now we get a squared equals 48 divided by 3, which is going to be 16. Now, we can use the square root property to give us a equals plus or minus the square root of 16, which is equal to plus or minus 4. So we know a equals positive 4, or a equals negative 4. Now we have 6r squared minus 3 equals 33. R squared is our quadratic term, so let's isolate this. First, we can add 3 to both sides to give us 6r squared equals 33 plus 3, which is equal to 36. We have 6r squared is equal to 36. Let's divide both sides by 6, and we get r squared is equal to 6. Now, we can use the square root property to give us r equals plus or minus the square root of 6. There's nothing to further simplify, so we know that r equals positive square root of 6, or r equals negative square root of 6. Now, we've reached our final challenge question. Pause and see if you can get the answer before I solve it. Now, we have 2/3 times 6x minus 1 squared plus 5 equals 29. 6x minus 1 is our squared term, so we want to start by isolating this. So let's start by subtracting 5 from both sides. This gives us 2/3 times 6x minus 1 squared equals 24. Now, let's multiply both sides by 3/2 to get 6x minus 1 squared equals 24 times 3 divided by 2, which is equal to 24 divided by 2, which is 12, times 3, which is 36. We have 6x minus 1 squared equals 36. Now, let's use the square root property to get 6x minus 1 equals the plus or minus of the square root of 36. The square root of 36 can be simplified to 6 to make it easier for us to remember. So now we have 6x minus 1 equals plus or minus 6. So we know our answers are going to be 6x minus 1 equals positive 6, or 6x minus 1 equals negative 6. So now we can solve for our x's. We have 6x equals 7, which means this x equals 7, 6. Or we have 6x equals negative 5, because negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5, divided by 6. We know x equals negative 5/6. Our answers are x equals 7/6 or x equals negative 5/6. And that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching.